Welcome, age of vintage society. One of the juicy rumours that sometimes popped up at dinner parties in the 1990s concerned the offset relationship between the Brady family's oldest son, Greg, Barry Williams, and his TV mum, Carol, Florence Henderson. How Florence Henderson dated her own son, according to Brady Bunch rumours. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. Carol Brady's date with her own son. The truth about those Brady Bunch rumours. On television, they were the epitome of the wholesome family. Even when the blended clan of 6 children that made up the majority of the Brady Bunch did something wrong, it resulted in teachable lessons often delivered by squeaky clean, caring parents, Carol and Mike. Like many of Hollywood's classic small-screen series of the late 1960s and early 1970s, the behind-the-scenes goings-on and cast relationships made for far juicier stories than ever appeared on air. For all the sweet-natured shenanigans of the Bradys, off-screen there was drug use, intimate relationships between the cast, hidden sexuality and disputes over storylines. The Brady Bunch aired from September 1969 through March 1974 on ABC and was created and produced by Sherwood Schwartz. The series went into syndication in 1975 and has become a rerun staple of cable television. The show followed the day-to-day lives of the Bradys, a blended family of 6 children, thanks to the marriage of Mike Brady, Robert Reed, to Carol Martin, Florence Henderson. Mike's children were 3 boys, Greg, Barry Williams, Peter, Christopher Knight, and Bobby, Mike Lookinland. And Carol's 3 daughters were Marcia, Maureen McCormack, Jan, Eve Plum, and Cindy, Susan Olsen. However, not everything about this show was totally innocent. Florence Henderson was one of America's moms, a television icon that endured through generations. Florence Henderson, who played Carol Brady on the Brady Bunch, was plagued by rumours that she and Barry Williams, her son in the show, were carrying on an affair. The two even went out to dinner one evening, which seemed to confirm the allegations. This was scandalous because Henderson was a 36-year-old married mother of 4 at the time, while Williams was just 16. But to hear them tell it, the attraction was quite one-sided and nothing ever came of it. When those little things called hormones start kicking in, you get excited by even inanimate objects, Williams wrote in his memoir. It wasn't that I sought to bed her, I just wanted to spend time with her. Henderson agreed and said their so-called date was totally platonic, at least in her view. That whole thing with Barry got blown way out of proportion, she said. I guess in a sense it was a date, because Barry thought it was, but of course I had no idea that his intentions were to date me. It has made for a good story, though. Florence Henderson's own family was a far cry from the Brady Bunch. Growing up in poverty, her father was a violent alcoholic who groped her, and her uncaring mother left when she was just 12. Born on Valentine's Day in 1934, Florence Henderson rose to become a household name, both in the film and in the TV industry. She is remembered for being an actress who was active in the acting industry for 6 decades. Her place of birth was in Dale, Indiana. She was born in a family of 10 siblings, where she was the youngest daughter. Her father's name was Joseph Henderson. He worked as a tobacco sharecropper. On the other hand, her mother was called Elizabeth. She was a homemaker. During her tender years, Henderson was taught to sing by her mother. She honed her singing skills, and by the time she was 12, she was a talented singer. As a child growing up during the Depression, she had a repertoire of 50 songs note perfect. By age 8, Florency, as her family called her, was working in her father's fields. At 12, she was singing at the local store for groceries for her family. For her education, she went to St. Francis Academy, situated in Owensboro, Kentucky, and graduated in 1951. Shortly after this, she joined American Academy of Dramatic Arts, where she would pursue her acting career. At the beginning of her acting career, Henderson ventured into musicals and performed in South Pacific and Oklahoma. It did not take time before she landed on Broadway, cast on Wish You Were Here. Her exceptional performance got her to act in Fanny, a role she performed 888 times. She continued with her onstage career to the late 60s. With the popularity that she had gained on stage, Florence Henderson switched to TV and quickly featured in some shows, including I Spy in 1956. Other shows followed suit during the 1950s. During the early 60s, she guest hosted The Tonight Show. This made her the first woman to ever guest host this show. She also appeared on TV as the Today Girl on The Today Show in 1959 to 1960. Her role was to cover the weather news on the TV show. Other shows that she featured in around this time include Password from 1962 to 1967 and The Dean Martin Show, 1968. Henderson's career turning point came to light in 1969. She was to feature in The Brady Bunch as Carol Ann Brady. This was the role that landed her in the spotlight for several years. She went on to play in the TV series for 117 episodes. She was America's mom, the mother that millions of fans wished was their own. But Florence Henderson's own mother was cold and unloving, as different from the character on the Brady Bunch as one could imagine. Her father was an alcoholic, and her mother walked out on the family when Florence was young. She would beg Joseph, her father, "Come on, Daddy, you can't keep doing this." But he had a violent temper and would trash their house during his rages. Chillingly, Henderson claimed that Joseph used to grope her legs when she rubbed his back to calm him down, and destroyed the trust she had in him. The legacy for Henderson was that for the rest of her life she was racked by guilt about not having done more to help her parents. It turned her into a relentless caregiver in her own relationships and informed her most famous role, Carol Brady. Henderson once told that to play the part she created the kind of mother that I wished I'd had, she said. At the heart of my silence is the sense of guilt that I surely felt as a little girl living under such circumstances. That guilt keeps the victim not just quiet, but makes them seek out the approval and the affection of the abuser. They did not have electricity or running water, and the walls in their homes often had holes into which they stuffed clothes to keep the cold out. Henderson recalled how in their home in Rockport one of the two upstairs rooms was filled with junk. In the winter the thin windows gave scant protection from the bitter wind. Henderson recalled going out to worm the tobacco in the tobacco fields, her term for pulling it up, where it would get stuck to her arms like Velcro. The family moved around a lot, possibly to avoid landlords from unpaid rent, and ended up in tiny Rockport, which had a population of 2,400. By then all her brothers and sisters had moved out apart from Babby, the second youngest, who was 3 years her senior. In her book, Henderson was frank about the man her father could have been. She wrote, "I could see good in my father, but his alcoholism had a devastating impact on himself and his family. When he wasn't drunk, he would be the sweetest, kindest man. He could stay sober for weeks and months, and, remarkably, sometimes for a whole year. During those tranquil periods he would get us up to go to Mass every Sunday morning. He loved to read, especially books about Wyatt Earp and the Wild West and Abraham Lincoln." Henderson praises her sober father as a man of considerable wisdom and advice, and would tell them to watch their reputation and their character. That all went out the window after a few drinks, when all hell would break loose. She first realized things were terribly wrong aged 5, when one night she heard her mother shouting at her father and went to their door to look through the crack. Henderson saw her mother standing jabbing her finger at her father, who was sitting in a chair in just his underwear, looking so sick and so sad. Then he began to cry. The sight was devastating and just about killed me. When Joseph was on a binge, Henderson and her sister would find bottles strewn throughout the house and piled up in the garage. Once he started drinking hard liquor, it was all over, and Henderson and Babby had to take turns looking after him. Joseph would beg each of them to go uptown and get him a beer, so, despite being underage, they would find a bar and ask the bartender for a drink which they took home. When he asked for more drink, they resorted to giving him whiskey with milk and a raw egg, in the hope it would sober him up. He would lie sprawled out on the sofa for days on end. Sometimes he would be violent, and in one episode Joseph grabbed Henderson, and her sister Pauline had to wrestle her free. Another time he ripped a screen door off its hinges and threw a table onto the floor, smashing the glass jars that were on it onto the floor. In the most disturbing passage, when her father would ask her to rub his back, he would start touching her calves with his hands. She wrote, "Looking back, I know they could have been so much worse than they were, no matter how young or innocent I was at the time. I always had an inbuilt sense of my surroundings and knew when something might be dangerous or harmful. While things never degenerated to a more severe degree of assault, the sacred bond of comfort, protection and safety that a child wants to have with her father was damaged forever." At the age of 6 or 7, Henderson wrote in her diary, "Dear God, give me the gift of understanding." Her mother was little better, although she did teach Henderson to sing at the age of 2, and soon singing became the antidote for her shyness. As far as she could remember, she had experienced no maternal love from her mother. Kind words or gestures of affection were virtually non-existent, and, as the last of 10 children, her mother had already reached the end of her rope by the time she arrived. Henderson once asked her mother if she and her father had a good love life together. The response was, yes, when he was sober. Elizabeth Henderson was not an alcoholic, but drank with Joseph to try and cope with him. She also did it to self-medicate, and she lacked the skills to channel her frustration in any other way. During the Depression in the 1930s, Henderson had to wear dresses that were made out of feed sacks, as her family could not afford to buy cloth or ready-made dresses. If the material wasn't bad enough, here was a gaping hole in the front. Henderson cried and told her mother, "I can't wear this to school, Mother. Please don't make me wear it. Everyone at school will make fun of me." Elizabeth responded, "Of course you're going to wear it. It will never be noticed on a galloping horse." When Henderson was 12, her mother had had enough and left and moved away to Cleveland. With a disturbing nonchalance, Henderson said that she and her sister Babby found it was par for the course. Like other traumas we experienced, we had learned there was little option than to accept it and try to cope the best we could. It would be decades before Henderson was able to deal with her anger at her mother and see her decision as courageous rather than cowardice. At 17, Henderson boarded a small DC-6 plane bound for New York City and began her journey to become a star. The last time Henderson saw her father was when she was a teenager and returned home from the Academy of Dramatic Arts in Manhattan to see him. He had a large swelling on his face, and as she rubbed his back she told him, "Daddy, I hate it when I see you like this. I'd rather see you dead." Joseph died slowly of cancer that started in his nose and spread out to the rest of his body. Henderson's sister Pauline and Babby took care of him. Pauline later told Henderson that their dad repeatedly apologized for taking so long to die. Her own life was a dream come true in many ways, but she felt she was always a work in progress with wounds still to heal and lingering pain in old scars. The first husband to Henderson was Ira Bernstein. The pair had 4 children together. Their marriage came to an end in 1985 after they divorced each other. 2 years later, in 1987, Henderson got married for the second time to John Kappas. This marriage lasted until the time of his death in 2002. Florence Henderson suffered heart failure while undergoing treatment at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center located in Los Angeles. She passed away on November 24th in 2016. She was 82 years old at the time of her demise. While the multi-talented actress, talk show host, recording artist, author, Broadway veteran, motivational speaker and philanthropist has conquered many aspects of the entertainment world, she broke new ground in television as the star of one of the medium's most beloved and longest-running situation comedies. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of Florence Henderson? She made her dream come true, although she had a childhood far from the ideal, for sure.